world only exists in your mind. Welcome to Skywatch TV News for June 8th of 2015. I'm Derek Gilbert. At least that's how some will interpret the results of an experiment conducted by Australian researchers who proved with bits of matter, atoms, for the first time, something that an experiment that has been done on beams of light in the past. This confirms one of the weird predictions about reality at the quantum level. Whether light or matter behaves as a particle or a wave depends entirely on how you choose to measure it at the end of its journey. Or in other words, according to the researchers, reality doesn't exist until and unless you look at it. This blurs the boundary between the world around us and our own subjective consciousness, and that's why people like Dr. Chuck Missler and Josh Peck write about quantum physics and quantum reality. New Agers will look at experiments like this and claim that we're living in a holographic universe, and as such, or because we're living in the Matrix, if we properly apply the power of our minds, mind over matter or the law of attraction, we can manipulate reality around us. This was the area of study chronicled in the book and the movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats. Journalist John Ronson focused on a unit within the U.S. Army that thought that they could harness the power of their minds to kill or to perhaps move through solid objects like walls. Of course, they found that that didn't work, and as Christians, we're not surprised by that. The truth is that this kind of weird science only points to the existence of the one who created reality and then placed us in it for his pleasure. Reality is real, a fact that you can confirm, although I don't recommend doing so, by standing in front of a moving bus and trying to think it away. It won't work. And just an interesting thought, speculation. What if the only reason you and I have physicality is because we are constantly being observed by the one who created us, the omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent creator of all things? Genetics researchers have found that major events in our lives can change our DNA and change the DNA in a way that we can hand down these changes to our descendants. Changes due to environment, lifestyle choices, or trauma can be inherited by our children. Researchers at Cambridge University estimate that about 5% of our DNA carries traces of past events going back generations, areas possibly linked to obesity and mental illness. As the Bible tells us, the curse of the sin of the father can be handed down several generations as a sort of genetic curse, if you will. But this raises some uncomfortable questions about the race to store our DNA information, our genetic information, in the cloud. Both Google and Amazon are working very hard to sign up genomics clients for their cloud storage services. Amazon Web Services and Google Genomics are targeting medical researchers, universities, drug manufacturers, and industry consultants, and sequencing the genomes of hundreds of thousands of people. Right now, research projects are the biggest clients for these services, but clinical use will overtake research in the next few years as drug manufacturers work to develop treatments for specific diseases or treatments aimed at specific people groups. The cloud genomics market is expected to triple in the next few years, up to about $1 billion a year by 2018. But here's the question that comes to my mind. How could this information be used by a future government? Here in the United States, as we move toward a single-payer system, which is the direction we're headed, the Affordable Care Act was just the first step on that road. All medical information, including inherited genetic diseases or defects, becomes a matter of public record and public interest. If the government is paying for medical treatments to correct things that I have inherited from my father or my grandfather, then that may impact how and whether I receive treatment for certain illnesses. And here's another thought, just pure speculation on my part. Researchers for at least 10 years have claimed that there is a genetic component to religious faith, that as much as 40% of our belief in God or our tendency to be spiritual is based on our genetic makeup. What if those researchers have it backwards, and that our religious faith, our faith in Jesus Christ, our faith in God, has changed our DNA in some way, just as a traumatic event or a poor lifestyle choice? Now think about this. If you've studied prophecy at all, you know that we are moving inexorably toward a one-world government. And wouldn't that genetic information about your tendency, your religious faith, your belief in God, be useful to a future one-world government? Especially one that seeks to identify and neutralize those pesky Christians. Last week, the U.S. Senate passed the Freedom Act, which replaces the Patriot Act, which expired in part because of a filibuster by Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Many, including some privacy advocates, praise the new act as a victory for the people. But as Judge Andrew Napolitano notes, it's not.
So under the Patriot Act, the NSA downloaded in real time, not just identifying information, but actual content of every phone call, landline, and cellular in the United States of America. Under the Freedom Act, there's a very slight difference in the manner by which this information is acquired, but there's no difference in the volume or nature of that information.
The Freedom Act simply privatizes the collection of data. It forces the telecommunications companies to do what the NSA had been doing all along. A good rule of thumb when you're looking at what a bill actually does when passed by the U.S. Congress, just figure it's exactly the opposite of its name. But don't be afraid. Don't be worried. The Lord hasn't given us a spirit of fear. First and foremost, our citizenship and our loyalties are to the kingdom of heaven. Now, this doesn't mean we have to like it or even be passive about it. We should let our representatives know that this is something we don't approve of. But looking at history, we in the United States the last couple centuries have had a pretty good ride. In fact, it's been an anomaly in terms of the amount of freedom that humans have traditionally had from their governments. And in spite of this, over the last 2 millennia, the gospel has survived the Sanhedrin, the Roman emperor, the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Mongols, the Huns, the Ottomans, the communists, the fascists, the Islamists. And so I like Jesus' chances against the NSA pretty well. Now watch for a new bait-and-switch approach to saving failing banks. In Europe, 11 nations have been warned by the European Commission to enact something called the Bank Recovery and Resolution Directive, or face penalties. Now, these rules ostensibly protect taxpayers against having to bail out failing banks. The burden is placed on creditors. It's called a bail-in. Now, this sounds okay until you realize that a creditor is anyone who's deposited money in the bank. Essentially, when you put money in the bank, you are lending it to the bank, which is why they pay you interest, even if it's just a little eeny-teeny-weeny bit of interest. These rules essentially protect taxpayers by allowing banks to confiscate deposits. And I expect to see this bail-in idea growing in popularity among the ruling elites who, of course, are the actual constituency that our elected officials serve. We'll probably see it on this side of the Atlantic before too long. Finally, a new study shows that support in the United States for polygamy, suicide, and human cloning are at an all-time high. A new Gallup poll released today shows that while a majority still believe that those issues are morally wrong, fewer people than ever think so. In fact, among millennials, Generation X, or those people born roughly between 1980 and 2000, they are the most accepting group surveyed by Gallup. The only issue in the survey that the millennials found that fewer than 20% of millennials found morally acceptable was marital infidelity. Suicide, polygamy, human cloning, more acceptable than cheating on your spouse. Here at Skywatch TV, we keep an eye on issues like this and how it affects us as we move ever closer to the end game of history, and we depend on your support to do it. For your gift of $10 or more, we'd like to extend these gifts to you. The book Angels in the Fire by Dan Stadler, which is a tale of a miraculous rescue from a horrific car accident. Trapped in a vehicle that crashed at 75 miles an hour, Dan Stadler's wife rescued from the fire by what she described as an angelic being, a man who disappeared. An account confirmed by first responders on the scene. That and the Disaster Preparedness Bible. Both of those we'll send out to you at our expense for your gift of $10 or more here at Skywatch TV. And directions on how to give available online at skywatchtv.com. Tomorrow night, Steve Quayle returns to talk with Tom Horn, the two best friends discussing matters that make your head spin. The topic tomorrow night, Steve Quayle's book, True Legends, that will air live on the Christian Television Network at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. That's UTC-5. That airs on Dish Network Channel 376, DirecTV Channel 267, Glory Star Satellite Channel 117, or streaming live online at ctnonline.com. And if you missed that, of course, you'll be able to see that later in the week on the Skywatch TV Roku channel. Instructions on how to add our channel to your Roku account are available online at skywatchtv.com/Roku. We thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is Skywatch TV.